Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar today, where we are going to give you an overview of, we're going to reveal to you our product roadmap for 2019, and we're really excited about what we have coming this year in development, and not least of which is a brand new user interface. And we're going to be giving you a peek behind the curtains today to see what that looks like. But before we actually kick off our presentation, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording this webinar, and we'll be sending that recording out via email, and we're also going to put that in our user community, which is at community.journyx.com. And just as a side note, if you've never been to our user community before, it's a really great resource for not only our archived webinars, training webinars, and webinars such as this, the product roadmap, but also for product documentation, for support articles, for news and updates, and also for submitting your support tickets and feature requests. So just remember to visit community.journyx.com, and that's where you're going to be able to see the recording of this webinar. In addition, if you have any questions at all during the course of the webinar, feel free to pop those into the questions box on the GoToWebinar panel, and you can do that at any time during the webinar. Whenever something comes to mind, we do have a designated Q&A at the end of the webinar, so we'll get to your questions during that time. So at this point, I will hand it over to Lance Ellisor, who is our Chief Operating Officer here at Journyx, and he's going to kick things off.
Yeah, hi everybody. Carrie mentioned earlier that we're excited about this year's roadmap, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, we really are authentically excited about what's going on with Journyx, both as a company, but also specifically with our product. This is going to be a year of great improvements and great progress, and we're not only excited about it, but we're excited to tell you about it. We've got improvements to, as she mentioned, the user interface, how people actually use the application. We've got improvements coming vis-a-vis mobility. We have big, huge improvements, frankly. We've got changes that are more on the kind of the automated side of things when it comes to integrating in timesheets into where everybody lives in their daily lives, and making sure that we're able to make life easier from a timesheet standpoint, and therefore the data more accurate, because we're pulling in things from where people actually work natively, where they kind of spend their time all day, every day. And then those are all things on the input side, but then on the output side, the value from Journyx comes from the time intelligence that you're able to pull out of it. So not only are we looking at making massive improvements to how data get into it, time data get into it, but also helping with how you get the intelligence about your labor out of it in a way that maps directly to your business goals and really gives you the value from Journyx that you need and that you deserve, both from a reporting standpoint and from an integration standpoint. So I think excitement and enthusiasm are the right words for the day, and hopefully you guys share in that. We want you to be excited about it. We want you to tell your colleagues in the industry that this is a solution that may be a good fit for what their needs are. So we can go on to before we talk about the product roadmap itself, I want to talk about the life cycle of the product roadmap. So if you go to the next slide, Carrie, the roadmap is not a destination. Can you advance the slide, Carrie? Yeah, it's not advancing for her. We had a couple of technical difficulties. Hopefully we don't have these going forward. There we go. A roadmap is not a destination, and it's not like a normal, like we're going to go to to Ottawa and you just have a roadmap and you get there and you're done. It's really more of a cycle, and so and these things are kind of all going on at different times, sometimes in parallel, and it's about the different stages with which a product advances and the plans for a product advance. And if you look in the upper left there, it starts with us. And particularly Meredith, who also, by the way, Meredith, our director of product, is also on the phone here. I hasten to add, especially Meredith, but not only Meredith, it's also other members of our company, observing, looking for, listening to business problems that our customers have, problems that market has, ideas, trends that are going on, both technology and business wise, and to understand the context behind which we want to make decisions for advancing our product. And then we analyze those things. So we interpret what we've observed. We analyze it in a way that is, frankly, quantitative in nature, in as much as that's possible, in order to decide which ones make the most sense to pursue. What's going to have the greatest value impact on our customers and our market overall, for in the least amount of time. Is basically that's the basic formula there. Then using that information, we're going to prioritize all the different work that we're going to do based upon what's going to have the biggest impact, what's going to mean the most, and what we can deliver in the most value we can deliver in the least amount of time. And then after we've got a kind of a prioritized list, that's when the hard block and tackle work begins. That's where we define each of the things that we need to work on in clear, actionable requirements that our engineers can understand and can actually build, can actually work on. And then we in the build process, and I'm not going to get too much into this, but we construct the product what's called iteratively in a kind of agile process, where every week to 2 weeks, it kind of depends on the speed of the project. We build, and then we check out what we built, and we reflect it off not just our internal stakeholders, but also our external stakeholders, and we'll get into that on the next slide. And then lastly, once we've built something, once we've got ready to launch it, we need to make sure that people know what it is. So we have to communicate it, connecting with clients and partners and the marketplace, so that people know what's coming, and we're able to actually deliver all of this value that we created. And in fact, today is an example of that type of communication. We can go on to the next slide here, Carrie, if you're able to. So those 6 stages I've kind of distilled down into 4 here. I've paired up the first 2 and the second 2 in the first 2 columns here. And I want to talk about how specifically clients such as yourself, you guys have a stake in this, and you also have an opportunity to be involved in the product process. And that's not true, frankly, of most companies, but it's true of every company where I have a role, because I make sure that it happens. I think it's critical to have client involvement. So let's talk about how that works. In the observation and analysis stage, we have opportunities for involvement when it comes to what we call ride-alongs. These are on-site visits where our product manager or other folks in the company actually go out. Maybe this has happened with a couple of you guys, because we did about a half dozen of them in 2018, where we go out and we sit with and observe how people use our product or don't use it, kind of in their native habitat, where they're sitting at their workstations or meeting areas or out at work zones or whatever, how it is that they use the product. We want to observe it, and we can learn so much with that context and in that sort of informal, more relaxed setting than we can just, with people sending ideas to us or sending a ticket or calling us up or something like that, which we value that as well. But being able to see it in use kind of out there is invaluable. There's this principle in product management called NIHITO. It stands for nothing interesting happens inside the office. And that's what we try to observe, is the NIHITO principle. We get out there and see what's going on. Roadmap dialogue, that's what we're doing today. And then we have an ability via our Journyx user community, which we'll talk about later in the webinar, for people to submit your ideas and even vote on them, and to communicate with other real users of the software about, hey, that's a great idea, I like that, I'm going to vote for that too. We take that into account. Survey participation, you guys have probably seen more than a couple of surveys from us. And we do that specifically because we really want to hear back from you. We really want to understand what people's needs are about the product, about our services, about just the way that you interact with us in several different ways. And then lastly, we do interviews anytime we win a new client or we lose a deal that we're selling to, or when a client leaves us, which we don't like to happen and doesn't happen too often, luckily. We want to talk with them and understand the why behind it. And it's not because we're trying to, especially when we lose, we're not trying to win it back or anything like that. Oh, we would love that. It's so that we understand where we have fallen short, or where there was a mismatch between their need and our what we offer, and we can work to ameliorate that going forward. When we move on to the next column here, you'll see that once we've got the basic observation and analysis in play, there's still opportunities for client involvement. So when it comes to prioritizing and defining the work in detail, we have what we call project working groups, which Meredith primarily manages. These are groups of clients such as yourself. And by the way, if you're interested, speak to Meredith after the webinar, and she can see about getting you onto one of the working groups, where the working groups look at the entire product process from beginning to end, from the idea all the way through the building and the delivery of it. They look at it and they give feedbacks like, oh, yeah, but you forgot about this, or oh, yeah, that function makes sense, but only if you do it this way. It's not really helpful if you do it the way that you're thinking about it. And we use that information to help us define and prioritize what we call the user stories. Those are the requirements. Then we also have an opportunity, and we haven't done this except in a one-off basis, but we're going to start doing it more programmatically for clients who have a particular interest in the way that we deliver things from a technical perspective. Say, for example, if they have a particular compliance needs or any sorts of needs that are non-functional in nature from like a scalability or a security standpoint, where they really need to make sure that the solution meets those needs. We will actually work with clients on a case-by-case basis where we can give you our technical solution designs, and you can say, yeah, that completely makes sense to me. You can give it to your own, software architect if you've got one, and she or he can look at it and say, well, I would do things this way. We don't have to do it the way that you guys propose, but we certainly will take it into account. Then once we're building there in the development stage, you have an opportunity to peek into what we're doing all along the way. So when we are building it, I mentioned that we build it in iteratively. Those iterations are called sprints. They happen in typically 2 or 3 week increments, or 1 to 3 week increments, most often 2 week increments. And all during that time, you have an opportunity to see what we're building as we're building. It's kind of analogous to if you were building a house, being able to go look at it once they build the foundation, then they put the framing in, then they start to put the wiring in, and you go back, every 2 or 3 weeks and kind of observe this house that it's a big investment for you. You want to make sure it's being done right. We give you the opportunity to peek under the covers at what we're building, and that we can course correct based upon the feedback that we get from folks. And then also at the end of the development, when we're almost ready to release it, we offer select clients the ability to test it out. So it's kind of like a beta test, but we call it user acceptance testing. This gives you the ability to test it in your own, with your own particular needs in mind, and give us feedback that says, well, yeah, man, all during out the build process, it looked like that house was going to be good. It's kind of like the final walkthrough, once the builder's done. It all looked like it was right, but man, this, I remember when I had a house built, this is a true story, and I went and I said, I see this light here in the hallway, but where's the switch for it? And the builder said, oh, yeah, we forgot to put a switch in for that. You can't turn that light on. So we fixed it, kind of last minute like that. That's what the user acceptance testing is all about. And then lastly there, when it comes to communication, there's all kinds of opportunities for you guys to participate, helping us write a white paper. Typically, when somebody has a success story where they've used our product and it's really helped them out, saved them a lot of money, and some of our clients have saved literally millions of dollars using our product, no exaggeration. We want to hear back about that, and we would like to talk about that to the marketplace, and we can do that. And there's reasons for you to do it. There's motivations for you to do this that Carrie can talk about with you at another time. What participating in these webinars, not just like the one today, but actually participating with us, as a panelist, saying, telling your story about, hey, I used Journyx for this, and this is how we did it, and it was amazingly helpful. Participating in our online Journyx user community that I mentioned earlier, and that we'll go into a little bit more detail on the very next slide. And then, social media. We're out on LinkedIn and Twitter. We have a Facebook presence as well, but primarily on LinkedIn and Twitter. We encourage you to engage with us there and not only hear what we have to say, but talk back to us. And then lastly there, this year, we're currently contemplating, we're not committed to it quite yet, we're gonna check on it, contemplating having our first ever virtual client conference where we could have something that's kind of like this webinar, but it's would be the better part of a day, and would have multifacets where you could have to go to different channels of interest and talk not only with us and the subject matter experts here at Journyx, but also with other clients who are like yourself about their problems, their solutions, their best practices, and it's kind of a way to share information and to learn a lot more. So going on to the next slide, we can talk about the Journyx user community. We just launched this. We had a functionality kind of like this before, but it was a little primitive. But now we have a really robust Journyx user community where you can find answers to questions. You can, as you can see there, you can learn, you can get best practices from other clients that are like you. You'll be able to, as I mentioned earlier, request and discuss and vote on new feature ideas. And then you can also just, find news, events, information about Journyx. You can see you'll find links to webinars and things like that. The ability to do that. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here where we talk a little bit more about three particular ways that stakeholders are involved, internal and external stakeholders are involved in the product roadmap. But to do this, I'm going to hand it over to the talented Meredith and let her walk you through this part of the presentation.
Thanks, Lance. My name is Meredith Zachritz, and as Lance mentioned, I'm the Director of Products here at Journyx. And Lance just went through all the various ways throughout the process that we can get customers involved in the feedback loop, but we are actually implementing and working on, or we have for years, and are building out our standard kind of processes for making sure that you guys are involved in a disciplined, recurring kind of way. And there are a lot of good reasons for this. Lance mentioned that Journyx 12 with mobile is going to be a whole new ball game, a really exciting redesign that will give you guys something that's just really just kind of groundbreaking, I think, in the space in general. But it's also exciting for us for other reasons, because we can deliver even more value to you going forward. And part of that is that, as we do this overhaul to give you guys more value, more, something that allows you to get your job done faster and easier and better. We're also updating, of course, the technology. And that is going to help us to deliver releases more quickly, to deliver features and value to you more quickly, because with the updated technology, we'll be able to extend it more easily. And so this feedback effort becomes really critical, because I can't just meet with you guys, once or twice a year and hope that does enough. When we're delivering these features rapidly, your feedback on a regular basis is key to making sure that what we do deliver is, of course, what you want and of value to you. And so that's why we are building this out and making our process here more robust. So Carrie, if you go ahead and load the first Product Council is something that we've done for a long time in Journyx, but we have formalized it, built it out, made it better. And this is our internal kind of steering committee. We meet monthly. We talk about the high-level roadmap, the total product view. We're obviously looking at, strategy and annual goals and the whole, from the whole company perspective. And it's a cross-functional team represented. Every area is represented on that council. But then we also have the working groups. And these can be both internal and external, and this is where we start to bring customers in. In 2018, we started a working group that met quarterly, not specific to a project per se, but just we had different topics for each of our meetings. And then we did follow-up in between those meetings, feedback and review of things on various pieces of information. But what we did start towards the end of 2018, and what will become the process for 2019, is that we now have working groups based on specific topics and projects. And so it gives customers the flexibility to attend those that are of interest to them, and perhaps skip those that are not. And of course, as we talk about Journyx 12, these working groups are going to be key to seeing the process of developing this really excellent new version, Journyx 12, both mobile and your core product, so that you have input and can be confident that what we're delivering is something that's going to really improve your ability to do what you need to do. Obviously, some of that working group will then be used also for the user acceptance testing as we get it built out further. So it goes all throughout the process: wireframes, visuals, work in progress, and then eventually the user acceptance testing of what comes out. And then finally, we have the concept of core teams. And this is really where we get into the very detailed nuts and bolts of, do we need this or that? Do we need it now or later? Should it work this way or that way? And what are the best, ways to deliver the features that you guys want to see? And that can go into so much into rapid prototypes where we test with various groups. We test usability to pick the best options, but those go very, very deep and are longer, more detailed meetings with that require detailed knowledge. Next slide.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Lance.
Just gonna jump in here on this particular framework. It's something that Meredith and I worked on together. This is just a way for thinking about a roadmap that's a little different than what you guys might have seen with other vendors, and that is, typically a roadmap that folks present to you is just its calendar, with months or day or years across the top, and then you just see like where specific versions are going to come out and what features are in that. And the problem with that I've recognized in my career is that the way that development works, you cannot 100% predict the future. Things are going to change either in terms of the resources you have, in terms of the priorities that you learn about from your clients and your marketplace, in terms of how hard it was to actually deliver on something. And so what you end up with if you do things out in a calendar way is it's a series of promises, and all it takes is for you to break one of those promises, maybe through no fault of your own, but nevertheless, and then the whole chain of promises falls apart. So in lieu of doing that, we want to be completely straight up and transparent and accurate with you guys. So instead of having a calendar, what we do is we just talk about things of what we're working on now. These are products and features currently in development. What's coming right after that, products and features that are under research. We're doing kind of pre-work for that, defining the scope, understanding it, right? That beginning part of the product lifecycle we talked about earlier. And then the later bucket are those things that they were approved by our product council to work on, but we're not yet actively researching on them because we just only have so many calories to burn, and we're working on the things that are in the now and the next bucket, but we will work on those next. And then every time we complete something in one particular area, so in the now, that we'll pull something in from the next bucket into the now, and we'll start working on it, and so on. So if we're finished researching something and that gets put in the now bucket, then we can pull something in from the later bucket and we start working on it. That's the way that we approach our roadmap. It's more of an ordinal approach rather than a specific calendar commitment that it may end up being broken, which we don't want to do at all. With that in mind, Meredith, you're the best equipped to walk us through what fits into each one of these buckets as we go forward.
Sure. So you can go ahead and load now, Carrie. And I'll have slightly more detailed slides for the now and next as well. So I'll just kind of run through those quickly, explain a little bit more about it later. Carrie, if you could click one more time, thank you. And then I'll run through later on this slide. So obviously what we were talking about with Journyx 12 is that we have some major interface and user experience overhauling going on, focused on some particular workflows that are the most important to our customers. And those are time entry, manager approvals, and then something new, a manager dashboard with data visuals. And so we're really excited about all of that. I will say, just for anybody who's having heartburn or heart palpitations with the time entry there, we are not going to do away with our current time entry screens, the layouts that you're used to right now in version 12. And I want to allay any fears that you would have to, in order to take advantage of this new user experience, that you would have to retrain users and retool your processes right away. That will not happen. However, we would like to work with you guys to eventually make the new time entry experience something that everyone would like to use, would like to migrate to. But we will not be pulling the rug out from under your feet in version 12, so no worries there. As I mentioned, reporting, the manager dashboard is going to be a new area with data visualizations, and that's your option to essentially pick a type of graph or chart and tie it to your Journyx reporting data. So that should be very exciting, and we'll take a look at an example here in a minute. We're also continually working on adding more sources for suggestions. And if you guys haven't gotten a chance to take a look at suggestions, I highly recommend it. We have a variety of ways to plug into it, and we're continually adding things. But it's a way to kind of fill out your timesheet for you based on what you're doing in other systems. And of course, we offer Exchange Calendar right now. We're beta testing a timer, a browser extension timer, and also Google Calendar via the platform Zapier. And so as you can see, we have some plans for some additional sources coming. And the Zapier platform in particular allows us to hook up quickly to a variety of third-party apps for this particular feature. Journyx Mobile is also part of this effort. We are building 2 new apps. They will be native to the iOS and Android platforms, and that's part of what we decided to do to be able to deliver all the great features that we intend to offer as part of mobile. And then, as I mentioned, the Journyx Timer as a browser extension, that's in beta testing right now, and you're welcome if you're on our cloud, if you're on the Journyx cloud, you can test that at any time if you've got users who use the Chrome browser. Next, after we get this lovely Journyx 12 out, first of all, there will almost certainly be some additional user interface and user experience work that we'll want to do based on your feedback and based on additional areas where workflows that we may want to also overhaul as part of the process. And we're going to have a general theme throughout the rest of the year focused on reporting improvements. And we have a lot of different potentials there coming that could be very exciting, both for reporting within the Journyx system as well as connecting to BI tools. Otherwise, in this category, we have some requirements spec'd out for pulling in some of your ERP or accounting data, for specifically project billing data, but we will expand on that as well so that your Journyx reports can pull in some of the critical data that you track outside, particularly project financials outside of the Journyx system. If you're familiar with data validation and all the rules you can use to make sure your users don't make mistakes in their time entry screen, we will be working to improve that tool. Obviously, you know, the suggestions that I mentioned that fill out your timesheet for you, that's a constant theme for us. That's an ongoing theme that we'll be improving over time so that eventually maybe you won't have to fill out your timesheet at all. You can just look at it and say, yep, that looks good. Here we go. And then we just have spaces for improvements to other areas, some new features that we expect feedback and will require some additional work. Journyx Mobile, another Journyx Mobile release to include some of our roadmap features will be there as well. And later. And as I said, reporting improvements are the general theme. Suggestions are continuous. And we also have some other features that we're looking at, approvals automation. So we're, now we're improving the workflow and the UI and experience for manager approvals. But in some cases, there are situations where the managers don't need to look at things. If certain rules are met, they can go on through the approval process. So we'll look at adding some of those tools. Credit card import automation for those who are tracking expenses in Journyx. And then finally, with our PX module that includes resource planning and project financial forecasting, we have some features that are built around making sure that you block off the resources you need before you get to the point where you know exactly who's going to do the work. So that's team assignments, agile assignments, that sort of thing. Soft bookings for projects that haven't actually been sold or confirmed. So let's move on into the details for now. It's like a funny tunnel sound on the sound right now. So Carrie, if you would, just hit the down button. And Lance and Carrie, if I could ask you guys to mute your microphones for a moment. Yeah, so I'm getting some background sound from you. There we go. So as I said, the major theme of Journyx 12, the biggest effort is around this interface and user experience overhaul. We just want to make things, so much better, so much easier, so much more intuitive. And that is what we will be focused on. It's what our user groups will be reviewing. We will have product marketing that will show you our progress throughout. This is a little unusual. We don't typically do a lot of really, a ton of pre-marketing, but it really is an exciting thing that a large project that should really improve your experience. And so we want you guys to be very aware of what's coming, and hopefully, you'll be excited to take advantage of it when it's available. Data visualization is part of it, so you don't have to go to Report Link and build your graphs and charts in Excel or Power BI even. We're going to offer you a dashboard right there in Journyx that allows you to see what you need to see quickly and also communicate it to others with really nice visual reports that make it clear, what's happening in your world. The standard sources for suggestions I mentioned. Chrome Timer will plug in suggestions based on a timer that you can start and stop at any point while you're doing your work. And then Zapier gives us access to a variety of very popular third-party apps, and where appropriate, where there is time data to be captured or effort data to be captured, we can hook up through that system. And then finally, we are building a new mobile app that will work in tandem with the Journyx 12 effort. I should point out that it's not going to be specific. You do not have to have Journyx 12 to use Journyx Mobile 12. It will be backward compatible for some of our releases, but it will be consistent with our core product. And so what you see in mobile will look like what you see in version 12. So it will be a seamless kind of experience, and going from mobile to browser will not be a big change. So let's go ahead and look at some of our samples. Just a few quick samples here. So as I mentioned, we're focused in part on time entry, and this is one of the more fun examples that we have, though it really is a different way to look at things, and it's a card-based interface. And you may have seen this in other systems like ERP and that sort of thing, but not for time entry specifically. And it really helps you to focus those who are, especially those who are doing project-based time entry, really focuses on that project time entry aspect, although it can also be extended to other types of card types. So, and you can see the examples here for time off, or if you've got a timer running, that sort of thing. So it's a really clean, clear kind of summary interface that then allows you to quickly and easily enter time. Next screen. But wait, as I said, I don't want to completely pull the rug out from under you. So of course, there's still are times, especially when we're at the end of the week and I need to submit my timesheet, where I still need to kind of look at the overall picture. And so we're not abandoning the, the week view, the grid. Okay, what did I do this week? Can you just show me a quick list and all of my time for this week? And so this is an example of the retooled grid. It still allows, as you'll see here, some example or some ways to summarize and then drill down, which is nice if you don't necessarily need to see all of the details by default. Next screen. Then we move on to the manager dashboard, and that includes both the approvals and reporting. And so what you see here are two examples. One, the top example is the new look and feel for when you have no approvals, yay, nothing in your queue to approve. And then the example below is what the queue looks like when you do have something in your queue to approve. And we are really focused for this, for the manager approvals, on that navigation when you're looking at, right now it's a little difficult to go from sheet to sheet if you need to review the sheets individually. We're really going to make sure that that process is much, much easier and better, so that it's very easy for you to run through your approvals quickly. Next screen. And then as part of the dashboard, in addition to your approval queues, you also have the option, as I mentioned, to have those data visualizations. And so these are some examples, but it's essentially this process of having a dashboard where you can pick what you want to see on your dashboard. You can pick the type of report, a pie chart, a line chart, a bar graph, and then hook it up to your Journyx data and configure it from there to show exactly what it is that you need to see. And so you can track, anything that you need to be alerted to, any overruns or exceptions type situations, or your KPIs. So this is going to be a really wonderful tool. And then of course you'll be able to export that data in some capacity so that you can communicate it to others who might need to see it. All right. So then moving into just a little bit more detail on what's coming next after Journyx 12. As I mentioned, really the reporting is going to be our next major area of focus. And especially well, I should say there are two points here really. Our native reporting, our engine internally, what it lacks, what in terms of flexibility or features, but also making sure that you can connect very easily to external BI tools. And we have a little add-on tool for Excel called ReportLink. But that framework that we built for that add-on tool for Excel also works, for example, with Power BI. It's a slightly more manual process right now to hook up. You have to create a web data source and connect it. But we're working on ways to make that automated so that you can connect to your favorite BI platform should you be using some kind of external BI tool. As I mentioned, I expect to have some UI UX work based on feedback, and there will also be areas that we will continue to overhaul. One example that we may be touching upon in the version after 12 will be screens of the time entry that involves in and out times. And that's one of those areas where there are a lot of different ways to do things, a lot of different reasons why people are tracking in and out times. And so we'll be working on that user experience. And otherwise, the improvements to one of the ways to improve reporting in the native engine is to pull in all the data that you need. So some of that financial information related to projects that you track in other systems can be pulled in for reporting in Journyx. And also the data validation tool, which has always been kind of its own little installer that you have to add as an add-on. We're going to make it less of an add-on and more of a, an integrated feature with the with your main system. And there was one more bullet there, and as I said, suggestions is a constant theme. We will have something new for you there at all times, and we would love to have you guys participate in, any piloting or testing or demos of suggestions at any time if you think this would be of interest to your end users. Because really, it's your end users who are going to see the greatest benefit because their timesheets will fill themselves out, and it will just make life so much easier for them. All right, next. Oh. Bullets keep appearing. I had also mentioned previously that we will have constant and ongoing releases for mobile as we add our roadmap. There are a ton of great features, suggestions, and requests out there, and so we will be building it out on a regular basis. And then the last last thing to note here is that we offer a variety of integration products. Right now we have a suite for Dynamics, for example, the various flavors of Microsoft Dynamics. And we are planning to add a product for Sage Intacct this year as well, because what we do works best when you have it incorporated with your ERP data. All right.
All right, thank you, Meredith. Technical issues and slide builds aside. So let's see if we have any questions. And again, if you do have questions, if you've thought of any throughout the course of the webinar, then go ahead and put those into the questions box, and we will be happy to answer those. And if you don't have any questions at this time, that's what we also have. You can get in touch with our presenters directly, and we will provide some contact information for them. And we can also open up our community so that you can ask questions regarding this webinar, regarding what you've seen today, and we can answer your questions. Either your account manager can get in touch with you or one of our presenters to give you a little bit more detail. But we can either answer your questions at this time, or we can allow you to kind of digest this, especially after we've sent out the recording. You can share it with your internal stakeholders as well. They might have some additional questions, and then you can bring those back to your account manager. So if we don't have any questions at this time, then what I'm going to do is go ahead and close out the webinar, and I thank you all for coming. This has been...
Sorry, we got a question. And somebody asked, when will Journyx 12 be released?
Oh,
and the answer to that, answer to that is the first half of this year. But part of the feedback process that we'll be engaged in with you guys is to, refine what we're doing. And so setting a specific date is not there yet, but first half of 2019.
Yeah, just a riff on that particular answer, and she's exactly right. And if we right now we have in mind kind of a general sense of the stuff that we want to put into 12, the things that we want to change as part of Journyx 12, and we have a sense that at the current speed with which we deliver, we were looking at about a mid-year delivery date for that, as she said. But if something were to change, if say one of you guys was to participate on the working group, or one of the people that's already on it were to say, you know what, that's great, but we really need for it to do it this way, and that's critically important. And everybody kind of nodded their heads and all agreed. That might make a change to what we deliver, and because it would make a change in what we deliver, it would also make a change in the timing we want to deliver. So what we're not going to do, as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, is make a promise that we can't meet. We're not going to say, we're going to get it done by this date, and then a change happens somewhere in the first 3 months of this year that changes the way that we're going to deliver it. And then we have to say, oh, we missed that date. So it's not a promise, it's a target, and it's a target we take very seriously, because believe me, and I think even Meredith would agree, nobody at this company is more passionate about us getting this thing out to market than yours truly, me. This is definitely a huge thing of importance for me, and it couldn't happen quickly enough. But it also needs to be the right thing. I don't want to send something out to market that doesn't meet needs or is broken, and I don't want to rush it and have something that's got quality issues. So basically, we want to do it right, and we want to do it quickly, and we have to balance between those two.
Yes, thank you, Harry, for getting your question right in under the wire so quickly. I just didn't even notice it. Does anyone else have any questions before we end today's webinar? Great. Well, again, thank you so much for coming. We're really excited about the changes coming on the horizon in 2019. This is going to be a big year, and we hope that you're looking forward to it as much as we are. So keep your eye on the user community at community.journyx.com. That's where we'll be posting this webinar recording. We'll also be emailing it out, and just keep an eye on there for all the goodness that we were talking about today. Thank you so much, and have a great day.